Welcome in to another episode of the Junkyard Dawgcast. I am your host, Benjamin Wolk. I am here as always post-game with Kipp Adams. And we're here to talk about what I feel is more of a breath of fresh air type of game for Georgia, sort of the deep breath that it's felt like this team has needed in first halves all season long, really just on the road all season long. But Georgia goes on the road to Starkville, wins the Battle of the Bulldogs 41-21 over Mississippi State. Really, we'll talk about some of the specifics of this game, but a pretty dominant first half, end of first half stretch into the beginning of the second half for Georgia. And by halftime, I think this was really the first time all season in SEC play, maybe a little bit in the Kentucky game, where Georgia folks were able to sit back and say, all right, I think Georgia went on the road and did its job in this one.
Yeah, I think this is the game that probably everyone in the Georgia fan base, coaching staff, program from the top to the bottom needed at this point in the season, because it's been a season where Georgia hasn't been able to get out of its own way, and you're going on the road in the SEC against a team that I don't think people should remember. This team put up 40 against Texas a couple weeks ago. They've shown their offense is capable of of getting into shootouts and being competitive. So we all thought, okay, based on last year and this year's Georgia team, this has all the makings of not a trap game, but this is a game that could, go into halftime with you still sweating a little bit. And that was not the case. This was Georgia's most complete game of the season, and one where they kind of, I don't want to say they put it all together, because there's still room for improvement here. But it definitely seemed like you saw what you were looking for in multiple assets of the offense, as well as a little bit of a showing of a defense, to where I'm not going to say it was Mississippi State, but I think Mississippi State's roster played a little bit of a role in some of the success you saw in Georgia's defense. But you can't complain about a 20-point win on the road in November in the SEC. And you honestly, looking at the rest of college football and the games that are still going on now, I think you should be ecstatic with that.
Completely agreed. I mean, I don't want to discount anything that Georgia did today, because I really do think, to your point, it wasn't the perfect game. This isn't going to be the perfect Georgia football team at any point this season. I've tried to harp on that over and over again to our subscribers over at Dogs 24/7, who I know get frustrated at times during these games because the expectations are so high. But I mean, you look at a game like this, I almost throw out the last touchdown drive just because it was mass subs on defense. It was one explosive play over the top of Daniel Harris. I don't think it's something that many teams are necessarily going to replicate. So you remove that one. Blake Shapen has a 14-play, 75-yard touchdown drive on his first possession as the full-time quarterback. And then Kamario Taylor has a 14-play, 75-yard drive on his first possession as the full-time quarterback. That was really the only sustained success that Mississippi State had in this one. So defensively, I thought Georgia rebounded, to your point. I think that a lot of it has to do with Georgia was able to create more havoc in the backfield in this one. 6 tackles for loss, 3 sacks, 2 quarterback hurries, knocked the starting quarterback out of the game, pressuring the quarterback. Like, you saw more of that in this one. I think that's more a byproduct of the struggles that Mississippi State has had protecting the quarterback and not eliminating their own negative plays. So I thought Georgia capitalized on an opponent. I think on offense, you saw what Georgia looks like when you're not playing Florida and Auburn and Alabama defensively. Like, those are some really talented, strong defensive fronts that Georgia's gone up against. And then you look up in this one and Georgia rushed for 303 yards. And we talked about it on the Junkyard Dawgcast earlier in the week. Like, there are areas of concern in this matchup, but we all kept going back to the same thing, which was Georgia's going to be able to run the football in this one. And not only did Georgia run the ball for 303 yards, I want to give a special individual shout out. And I want to hear what your thoughts are just in terms of the game that he had as well, Kipp. But Nate Frazier, there's been a roller coaster of conversation around Nate Frazier this year. When you think of some of the, the big play he has in overtime against Tennessee, and then the fumble that he has against Alabama, and then Chauncey Bowens has some breakout games, and it feels like he should be the feature guy. Well, Nate Frazier was the best version of himself that I feel like I've seen since he's been at Georgia. He finishes with 12 carries, 181 yards, 1 touchdown. He has the 59-yard explosive touchdown run, and then he had another one that I think he went for like 40 without a shoe on when he gets, sort of bottled up at the line of scrimmage, squirms out of his shoe, runs, 40 or so down the sideline there. I mean, is it crazy for me to say this was the best Nate Frazier we've seen, Kipp?
Well, it figures that, as you said, Nate Frazier, I had, lightning strike right behind me, and there's just thunder going on for a couple of seconds, because that was basically Nate Frazier announcing to the world that, his departure has been greatly exaggerated. And I think when we talked about after the Alabama game, that was like the question that we had to answer and discuss was, is Chauncey Bowens going to just take over, and is Nate Frazier going to move to the background? And you actually saw over the next, 4 to 5 games, a version of Nate Frazier to where the focus was ball security. You could tell when he was running, like that was where his main focus was. Maybe, at the cost of some yards after the carry, he was just making sure I'm not putting this thing on the ground again. And today you saw Nate Frazier just running carefree, but not just carefree, just angry. Like that was an aggressive Nate Frazier, and one that has regained the trust of the coaching staff, and it paid off for Georgia. And the fact that you saw when he can run aggressively like that and hold on to the football, there's a reason why he was, an elite player coming out of high school. Like that's what we saw in the All-American Bowl, was the fact that he can break one on a moment's notice. He can get to that second level, and it changes what Georgia's able to do. Like we're going to talk about all the different plays that were made by Georgia's offense, but when you have a running back that can break off explosives, and when you have the first Georgia run by a running back over 50 yards since the Vanderbilt 2023 game, I think it says a lot. That like Dejon Edwards and Cash Jones had those against Vanderbilt, haven't had one since. And the funny part of that stat was the last Georgia player to have a 50-plus run was Anthony Evans, who's, playing for Mississippi State today. So I just think that aspect of Georgia's offense is something that they've sorely needed the last couple of years. And he brought it to the table today. And I think it's just kind of just one part of, several praises that we should give to this Georgia offense, and not just the ball carriers.
No, I completely agree. I mean, the front, I'll start here. Stacey Searles, there was a lot of people talking about Stacey Searles' job security this offseason. We saw it all the time. I mean, this offensive line has been really good recently. Again, I think that they've found a mismatch up front that they took advantage of against Mississippi State. But, for obviously what Nate Frazier did, but just across the board, I mean, you've got, Gunnar Stockton gets 30 with his legs. Chauncey, 4 yards per carry, but 20 or 28 yards, but 4 yards per carry. Bo Walker only 22 yards, but 5.5 yards per carry. Dylan Bell got involved a little bit, and I know he fumbles it on, the one sort of miscue, I would say. But I mean, my big thing about this Georgia game is just, if Georgia is humming along offensively and is getting some first half stops, like this is what Georgia can look like. Like you go look, and this is a Georgia team. I know they've stressed people out all year long. Like this is the type of team where people have been, Dogs fans have been breaking into the tequila at halftime because they know that they're in for the long haul in this one. This was a much different game. I mean, you just go look, there was a 5-drive stretch after Georgia fumbles. So you think Georgia's about to punch in a touchdown there. They don't. They fumbled inside the 5, which is cardinal sin, kind of just an unfortunate timing turn of events the way that it happened. Quintavious Johnson forces the fumble immediately after, which Georgia just needs more of those game-changing type of plays on defense. And then Georgia's next 5 offensive possessions, 27-yard touchdown drive, 90-yard touchdown drive, 77-yard touchdown drive, 75-yard touchdown drive, and then 72-yard touchdown drive. Those last 2 on the 59-yard run by Nate Frazier, and then the 64-yard touchdown catch and sort of change the field and slow it up and speed it up by Noah Thomas. I mean, by the time that touchdown happened by Noah Thomas coming out of the half, I mean, Georgia had just completely dominated the middle eight. Georgia had just scored on 5 straight touchdown drives, and this just had a completely different feel of a second half to any game that Georgia has lived since, I guess, Texas last year, maybe, when they're on the road. But even that one got a little bit dicey in the second half. Like, this was the most comfortable win across the board in SEC play that I can think of Georgia having, in a couple years now. So just, I mean, Kipp, from your perspective, like that 5 touchdown stretch, like, is that sustainable? Is that something that we feel like Georgia can just dominate first halves the way that they did in that stretch? Or was that a lightning in a bottle today against an inferior opponent?
Well, I mean, the way you phrase that question, I can't help but be honest here and say that I think Georgia saw something on the line of scrimmage and knew that they were going to win at the point of attack. But at the same time, I'll go back to what you were saying before, and what I kind of hinted at with Stacey Searles. Georgia's offensive line was as healthy as it ever was going into this game. Now that Drew Bobo got banged up there towards the end, and we'll find out, what happened there with I think his hand. But I just want to point out, don't be shocked if on Monday Monroe Freeland gets SEC Offensive Lineman of the Week, because he was outstanding against Mississippi State. For me, I think it was probably his most impressive game I've seen this season, maybe from him, period. And he was, several key blocks in that game on explosive plays that led to explosive plays. And I think it kind of shows, again, that maybe people had kind of given up on what Georgia was going to be able to do, what their upside would be. And I think, again, the offensive line showed, like, we can pass protect. Like, Gunnar Stockton was basically untouched most of the game, able to get what he wanted to, rarely rushed. And then, you saw what the running backs were able to do. Do I think they'll be able to have that kind of success against Texas? I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility, which is not something most people were talking about a couple weeks ago. But yeah, there's going to be a difference in talent level on both sides in the line of scrimmage. I also don't think that this is last year's Texas team in terms of talent on either side of the ball on the line of scrimmage either. So I think they showed the upside today, and I think it's exactly what you want to see moving into what's going to be still one of the biggest games of the season.
I did want to call out one other, we've called out a couple moments. The Nate Frazier run stands out. The Noah Thomas long touchdown stands out. The Quintavious Johnson punch out stands out. The 4th down stop when I think Georgia was up 17-7 there at the end of the first half, and Mississippi State dropped it. I think CJ Allen was closing and was probably going to make a play on that anyways after getting chipped on the line of scrimmage. That was a big one. But the play of the day to me, not scoreboard changing, not game changing, though it did come in a 3rd and 11 spot where it might have looked way different. Gunnar Stockton launches one up to Elias Williams, who was completely covered by the defensive back. And I want to give credit to some of Mississippi State's DBs in this one. Even on some of the plays Georgia made down the field, it seemed like they were well covered all game long. And even on that Elias Williams big play on 3rd and 11, he goes up, he makes the freakish unicorn type of play that Elias Williams is known to make. Butt cheek lands in bounds, and he extends the drive, and Georgia ends up scoring shortly thereafter. Thinking about Elias Williams, Elijah Griffin, Dontrell Glover, Juan Gaston, like, Georgia is getting more meaningful reps out of true freshmen than they've been getting in a long time. And part of that is the talent level of those guys. Hell, even Zayden Walker today, throw in the other, 5-star from the state of Georgia that we haven't talked about as much today. He got in some pass rush situations, and he didn't make a specific play himself, but he created havoc and chaos in the defensive backfield, or in the backfield for Mississippi State. So, this group of freshmen, as Georgia's moving along, they're getting better and better. I think you're going to see Elias Williams more and more. I think you're going to see J.J. Hanna more and more. You're going to see Juan Gaston used in the spots that they are comfortable with him more and more. And, this 2025 recruiting class is shaping up to not just be a really good one for the long term, but one Georgia absolutely needed right now.
Yeah, Zayden Walker got extensive snaps. He ended up with 3 tackles in the game. They continued to try to get Landon rolling the ball. It did not work on the one play, but he still has been getting open down the field as well. It's similar to, once he breaks through, I think he's going to be in position to make some explosives for Georgia. You can kind of see it there. They know what his speed brings to the table. And, yeah, Elias Williams, it is hard not to just remember that Darnell Washington played for this football team just a couple seasons ago, because you see him out there and you're like, you don't see these types of tight ends very often, and yet, gosh, Georgia they just break the mold again and filled another one in Elias. And I think you could tell that he's already added weight. He's going to continue to get stronger. They're already using him a lot in 3 tight end formations. Depending on, if Oscar Delp, if he did in fact get a concussion today, if he isn't, in concussion protocol, it's me speculating. We don't know the injury exactly just yet, but if he happens to miss the Texas game, they're going to call on him even more. But I do think the freshmen, especially the tight ends, are making an impact. And I think the tight ends over the last month, you had Lawson Lucky. I said Delp, I meant Lucky. You had Lawson Lucky with the 3 touchdown game against Ole Miss. He gets hurt today. You have Oscar Delp it's shocking to know that was his first touchdown of the season, but he was making play after play in this game. The tight ends have emerged as a big focal point of this offense over the last month. And I also think that comes with them not having to stay in line to block as much. They're not being asked to do as much because your offensive line is gelling. It's coming together and getting healthy. And so I think that all is coming together to show you that maybe Georgia's offense isn't as stagnant as people think, and maybe there's potential for them to have performances like this every week.
All right, when we come back, we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to talk about just some statistical overview from the game. We're going to do a look ahead to Texas, and then there's some exciting things happening around the country right now. It's early in the day because of Georgia's noon kick, but there's still some exciting things happening around the country, so we'll talk about what we've seen already. For those that are watching live, please go subscribe to Dogs 24/7. If you're listening after the fact on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, please like and subscribe there. Also, please go to dogs247.com and check out the subscription. We'll be right back, and we will talk Georgia stats from the game. All right, Kipp, we've already talked about some of the individual performances, and I'll get into some of those stats as well. But just the game overview, I think, really paints the picture of how dominant Georgia was in this one. We've mentioned the offensive line, the run game. Georgia clearly saw a mismatch in terms of fronts against Mississippi State. Offensively, Georgia has 567 yards of total offense. That was 264 passing, 303 rushing. That was 30 first downs. Georgia was 7 of 12 on third down. Didn't even need any fourth downs, even though Georgia has been really good on fourth down. And it looked for a second, the little gamesmanship from Kirby Smart looked like they might go for it on fourth down, and then they bring the punt team out, and then they bring the offense out, and then the timeout, and then the punt team, and then the offense, and then it just turned out to be an offsides, extended the drive. I thought that was some cheeky little coaching there from Kirby Smart on that one. On the flip side of it, Mississippi State had 322 yards of total offense. A lot of that came in the fourth quarter on Kamario Taylor's 2 extensive drives. He hits the big play in the passing game. 173 passing, 149 rushing is what Georgia allowed. They probably would have preferred those numbers to be a little bit less given how the game was going for much of it, but you get so many reserves in the game in the fourth quarter. I don't think that you're going to be too disappointed with that, and statistically speaking, 2 weeks in a row were pretty similar stats for the opponent, both passing game and running game. So I think Georgia is at least forming some kind of defensive identity on that front. Average 3 more yards per play in the game than Mississippi State did. You're gonna win just about every football game that you're in when you're averaging 3 more yards per play than your opponent. Gunnar Stockton, we talked about it before we got on, Kipp. It feels like it's crazy to say it, but 18 of 29, 264 yards, 3 touchdowns. Just feels like a run-of-the-mill Gunnar Stockton game at this point. And if you'd asked me before the season if I thought that 60-plus passing for 260 yards and multiple touchdowns with no turnovers was like the common expectation of a Gunnar Stockton game, I would have said that's pump the brakes a little bit. That's not exactly what you should be expecting, but he did that. He made some plays in the running game again, 31 yards rushing, had a pickup on a QB sneak situation on a 3rd and short. He has one where a play kind of breaks down with him and Josh McCray, and he flips the field back and picks up a few yards. Like, he is as good as any quarterback when it comes to, yeah, sure, you're not breaking off the 20, 30 yarder, but it looks like you're going to lose 2 and all of a sudden you pick up 4. Gunnar does an unbelievable job of that. And those are some of those hidden yards that I think get missed. Neither Mississippi State quarterback went for over 100 yards passing. Blake Shapen threw for 86. Kamario Taylor throws for 87. I will give a shout out to Kamario Taylor. All 3 touchdowns came from his legs in short yardage situations inside the 5-yard line. He's a big, physical, athletic runner of the football. He carried it 12 times for 53 yards and 3 touchdowns, showed that he has a cannon as well. Just needs to get it a little bit more on a string than he has it. But I was really impressed by what Kamario Taylor did too. That's sort of the offensive run through, Kipp. I know defensively, we talked a little bit about what Georgia did. 6 tackles for loss, 3 sacks, 2 quarterback hurries. KJ Bolden got heavily involved in his return, avoiding a targeting penalty for the 2nd week in a row. Just statistically, what do you think stands out most to you from this one?
Oh, well, early in the game, it was looking like, okay, Georgia's pass rush is just going to come from its linebackers again. But, I mean, they were having success, so it's not like it was a bad thing. Like Raylan Wilson, outstanding game from him, making an impact early. You saw C.J. Allen in there as well. But as the game went on, shout out to Quintavious Johnson. I know that his, I'm not going to say knocking your quarterback out of the game. That's just the kind of the result. But, getting there, making a play and continuing to improve and get better and make more of an impact in the backfield. If you can get a tackle for loss and from him and Christian Miller every game, at this point, you'll take that. Like that's exactly what you need to have happen is your defensive front, your deep tackle, your edge player, each making a play or 2 in the backfield. Just makes it so much easier for Glenn Schumann to be able to just to dial up different things, but also not to have to ask your linebackers to get all the pressure. I think that was the kind of big thing. They're asking KJ Bolden to do a lot every single game. He was all over the field again. It's tough. You're gonna have to get hands on guys every now and then. Georgia continues to draw a flag or 2 that helps opposing offenses. This time it helped Mississippi State get out of the their own end zone, but at the same time, it wasn't a situation where it really hurt Georgia overall in the end. So you like what you see overall. It's a young group. It's a group that was also kind of banged up. You didn't have DeMello Jones. You're asking, Daniel Harris to come back in there and play more snaps, rotating in for Ellis Robinson out there. I think you have to be overall happy with what you saw. And I also just want to give credit to you because I really enjoyed your article on the remembering a recruitment with Kamario Taylor. And I think throughout the game, it was like, this just felt like what Kirby Smart said. Like, this is the quarterback getting asked about Blake Shapen, but then saying, yeah, what about the other guy? Because we can't really simulate what this guy brings to the table. And as soon as he went in the game, even on the first drive, you saw it. You're like, okay, yeah, this guy is trouble, and he is going to be a problem, in the SEC moving forward. I think that is a guy that has a bright future. Just an outstanding elite athlete out there playing quarterback. So I think when you're going against somebody like that, and you know what athletic quarterbacks, guys that can extend plays. That's kind of been Georgia's defense's Achilles heel under Kirby Smart. You definitely take this performance because it's like you plan for them to be in the game in packages, but for him to get extended snaps, it's a different kind of pressure, especially when you're moving in, backups and even younger players into the game. So I think overall you're happy with that, and you're also just happy that you're able to get some of these other guys extended snaps. I mean, like we talked about, this could be a 4-quarter game. You're playing starters the entire time, but then again, you got to sneak in the rare, road playing time for your second string guys. That's invaluable, especially this late in the season.
Some good injury updates on the Georgia front from this one. Jordan Hill will not be joining us for the show, but he was at Kirby's press conference, and apparently Lawson Lucky, who we referenced earlier, got hit in the head, looked kind of ugly when he was down on the field. Apparently he wanted to go back in the game. Georgia decision makers, quoting Jordan Hill here, Kirby saying that Georgia decision makers would not let him go back in the game. I'm sure he's under concussion protocol. I'm sure that they'll take it easy on him over the next week and heading in to next week. But the fact that he was fighting to get back into the game is at least reassuring where he's at from a mental standpoint. Also, Georgia center Drew Bobo went out of the game at one point in time as well. Apparently he just had a laceration on his snapping hand, so he came out of the game, but that sounds relatively minor. Those are big updates because next week is kind of the one we've been talking about for a while, and I know that the teams have gone through their own peaks and valleys throughout the year that have maybe made us forget about November 15th at times, but now November 15th is on the precipice, and it is Texas coming on the road to Georgia. Georgia's obviously going to be coming off playing probably its best football of the season. Kipp, what's the vibe check on this one heading into next week's matchup?
Well, I guess it's probably a little bit easier to say based on Georgia having its most complete game of the season. But I thought this before this game, whether you want to believe me or not, it's up to you. I like this matchup for Georgia. I know Arch Manning's been playing improved football. But it's still going to be a road game for him. It's still going to be a test for their line of scrimmage players. And I honestly, even though they're playing improved, I don't think that I don't think that they're the same team that played Georgia close in the SEC championship game and got some good calls in a loss in Austin that made it closer than maybe it even should have been. I think there are matchups here that I think Georgia can take advantage of, especially at the line of scrimmage for that offensive line, for them to be playing its best football of the year for the Bulldogs. I think it bodes well for Georgia the way today unfolded and overall the health of their offensive line. I think those are the key aspects that should have them feeling confident going into this game against Texas.
I'm inclined to agree with you. I mean, I always end up week of sort of figuring out, like, if I was the opposing team, what would I do to try and beat Georgia based on what you do well? So I'm sure I'll be playing that game this week and say, if Texas does this or Texas does that, or if Georgia fails to do this, then it's going to be a tight one. But I do think that what we saw with Georgia controlling the line of scrimmage against Mississippi State was a sign of, like, this is what this Georgia team can look like when it's not getting overpowered on the line of scrimmage. And I think that Florida and Auburn were able to do that in a way that people didn't fully respect because they're programs who were firing their head coach. So I understand why people wouldn't be able to, zero in on that one position group or that unit and how that matchup might affect a game. But I definitely think that it did. All right. Like I said at the beginning of the show, we are recording this, or if you're watching this live, this is shortly after Georgia beats Mississippi State 41-21. So a lot of football still to happen across the country, but some big results that have already taken place. Ole Miss wins 49-0 against the Citadel. I don't know if it was available in many places, not in a gambling state, so I wouldn't know, but I don't know if it was available. I think they were 54.5-point favorites against the Citadel. So if some sicko out there was sweating out Ole Miss 54.5, bless you. Texas Tech 29-7. I felt like them as a 10.5-point favorite. The writing was on the wall there that BYU was just, they were up against too much. And that one, Ohio State wins 34-3 on the road at Purdue. I continue to think nobody is going to beat Ohio State this season, and there is just an inevitability about what the end of this college football season is, but that's why they play the games. Maybe I'll be proven wrong throughout, but I would say the game of the day so far, and what will probably prove to be the game of the day, even if whatever happens the rest of it, Indiana goes on the road to Penn State as a 14.5-point favorite. They need a game-winning touchdown drive in the final minute to win 27-24. Kipp, you and I were watching this one before we went live. We both had to see the end of it. Omar Cooper makes the crazy catch or potentially non-catch, depending. I know we had varying takes on that one, but I guess what I will say is when Fernando Mendoza needed to make plays, Fernando Mendoza made plays, and I think that he is shielding up an Indiana roster that's not as good as some of these teams that it's going to be playing the rest of the year. But when you've got a quarterback like Fernando Mendoza, you might be able to make up for it.
My goodness, what a performance by him. I mean, when they needed it most. And yeah, I mean, Omar Cooper with the catch of the year, outstanding. I mean, getting pushed out of bounds, and like we're trying to see if what one foot's doing, and then it's floating over the line, and then the other foot, the back of it, looks to the ruling on the field says he just got in. It was an outstanding play followed by an inexplicable squib kick that still gave Penn State a chance to come back in this game. But an outstanding performance, and yeah, you shouldn't forget that this was a talented Nittany Lions roster, one that everyone thought was going to be where Indiana is right now. And Nicholas Singleton made it close, came with some big runs late in the game. He's an extremely talented running back. And I think overall, at the end of the day, you can't really talk about like Indiana's underwhelming performance in a situation like this and be on a Georgia podcast when we just saw the things that Georgia's had to do to, pull off victory in the face of defeat. I mean, even the Florida game. And it's just so many times during the season. At the end of the day, like you move on to the next one, and you don't count. You should never count like bad victories. It's a win, okay? And there might be a such thing as a bad win, but I think at the end of the day, like if you get that W and you get to move on, then that's the only thing that matters. Indiana's 10-0. They have maybe the Heisman favorite. This is a New York City visit. Is his the lose at this point? He's just been incredible for them this season. And yeah, when they needed him most, like he made the throws, he made the plays with his legs he needed to, and he's got them in a rare position. That was an outstanding game to watch, and one that no apologies on my part. I think it was worth it for us to wait to record the show till we saw the end of that, because I don't think any of our viewers deserve to be their focus be on us instead of the final few plays of that game. So I think that was a great decision all along, and we all benefited from seeing an outstanding college football game.
Completely agreed. And one thing you mentioned there that I also very, very much agree with is I know people are going to do the Indiana's not actually that good thing. And I get it. I understand why. I think this game and what they did in the Iowa game shows me more about this Indiana team than any of these other games where they're winning 55-10. Because when you go on the road to Kinnick and you go on the road to Happy Valley and you pull out these one possession games where everything wasn't pretty, yet you're still finding ways to win, shows you an identity trait about this team. And I think you're spot on. If you're a Georgia fan listening to this show, you know that. You're already well aware that you go play ugly at Auburn. You go play ugly against Kentucky or against Florida. It's not always going to be perfect, but as long as you find a way, that shows you a lot about this team. So I definitely think that this Indiana win, even though it wasn't pretty, even though people are going to hate on it because Penn State is a shell of itself, you still went on the road, played a team that's more talented than you across the board, and found a way to get a win when it didn't look like that was always going to be the case. That's really the extent of games across the country right now. I mean, Oregon's up 2-0 on Iowa, so I would love to see how in the world that's happened already while we've been doing this show. But otherwise, Texas A&M, Missouri's going on right now. Syracuse, Miami's going on right now. Auburn, Vanderbilt's going on right now. Those are all at 0-0. So I don't know about you, Kipp, but I think we've had our fill talking Georgia football today. I think I'm ready to go watch some college football. So appreciate you for joining the show. Appreciate everybody who watched us live. Anybody who's listening to or watching after the fact on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, please go like and subscribe on those platforms. Please go subscribe to dogs247.com. If you subscribe, you get a free membership to Paramount Plus as well. So I encourage everyone to go do that. But until next time, I'm your host, Benjamin Wolk, joined by Kipp Adams. Georgia wins on the road in Starkville, 41-21 to beat Mississippi State, and Texas comes to Athens next week. We will see you then.